15 Switch games, ranked on what they actually do once you're playing them. The systems, the pacing, how they hold up after the credits roll. This is the list. Bayonetta 3 sends the witch across a fractured multiverse, where alternate versions of herself are being erased by an entity called Singularity, which pushes the story into something bigger than the usual demon-hunting plot the series is known for. The combat still runs on witch time, dodging at the last possible second to slow the world down. But this entry adds Demon Masquerade, letting Bayonetta summon and directly control giant demons mid-fight, instead of just triggering a finisher and watching. Weapon switching on the fly changes her entire moveset, so a combo can shift from gunplay to melee without breaking rhythm. Viola, a new playable character, plays completely differently, a rage-building meter, a rapier, and a cat companion named Cheshire fighting alongside her. Splitting the campaign between two combat styles keeps it from feeling like a repeat of the last two games, even if Viola's sections divide people. Super Mario Bros. Wonder brings the 2D Mario formula back with the Flower Kingdom's ruler turned into an elephant by Prince Florian. But the plot is really just an excuse to get to the Wonder Flowers scattered through each level. Touching one flips the entire stage's rules. Mid-run, pipes start crawling. Mario turns into a ball of eyes. Gravity flips. Backgrounds start singing. It's the first time a mainline 2D entry has changed its own logic on the fly, rather than just adding new terrain. New power-ups, like the Elephant Fruit and Drill Mushroom, change how you interact with stage geometry. And the badge system lets you equip modifiers, a parachute cap, a grappling vine, that reshape how you approach levels you've already cleared. 4-player co-op stays chaotic in a good way, with everyone bouncing off each other's chaos rather than getting in the way.
What's that? Wonderful!
Astral Chain. Set in a near-future Ark colony under attack by chimera creatures bleeding in from a parallel dimension, Astral Chain puts you in a police unit called Neuron, tasked with hunting them down using tethered creatures called Legion. The hook is controlling two things at once, your officer and their Legion, through a chain that connects them. So combat becomes a matter of positioning both independently while they cover each other. Different Legion types change the whole approach. One's built for close melee, another for ranged suppression, another for grappling enemies into position. Outside of combat, the game leans into detective-style investigation, scanning crime scenes and tailing suspects, which slows the pace down between fights. It's Platinum Games doing something outside their usual pure action mold, and the chain mechanic is distinct enough that nothing else on Switch really plays like it.
You all right? We're a man down. Give us a hand.
Let's get him!
Metroid Prime Remastered takes the original GameCube game, Samus investigating space pirate research on Talon 4 after a distress signal, uncovering a planet slowly corrupted by Phazon, and rebuilds it with modern visuals and, more importantly, modern dual-stick controls. The original's first-person exploration always worked, morph ball sections and all, but the tank-style aiming held it back. With proper aiming restored, the pacing of scanning ruins for lore, backtracking with new upgrades, and piecing together Chozo history feels far less clunky than it used to. The structure hasn't changed. It's still an interconnected map built around gated progression, not a shooter with a story bolted on. What the remaster proves is how well the exploration design aged compared to how dated the controls had become, and closing that gap makes the whole thing hold up on its own terms again. Animal Crossing New Horizons drops you on a deserted island through a Nook Inc. package deal, with no real objective beyond building the place up, paying off loans, inviting villagers, decorating however you want. The real-time clock ties everything to the actual calendar, so seasonal events, bug and fish spawns, and holidays only show up when they'd show up outside the game. Terraforming was the bigger structural change from earlier entries, letting you reshape rivers and cliffs instead of just placing furniture on a fixed layout. Blathers still runs the museum, and donating specimens remains one of the few concrete goals in a game that otherwise resists giving you one. It landed in early 2020 at a moment when a slow, low-stakes island to putter around in mattered more than usual. But the loop itself, Crafting, decorating, visiting other islands online holds up independent of that timing. Pikmin 4 centers on a rescue mission for missing explorers, including series regular Captain Olimar, with a customizable rookie character leading the search alongside Ochi, a dog-like Pikmin companion that can carry you around and fight on its own. The core loop is still real-time strategy at a small scale, directing squads of color-coded Pikmin to fight enemies, break obstacles, and haul objects back to base before the day's timer runs out. Ochi adds flexibility that earlier entries didn't have, letting you ride him for speed or have him manage Pikmin independently while you handle something else. Night missions introduce a separate survival mode entirely, defending a base as enemies swarm in the dark. Dandori challenges timed efficiency puzzles get their own dedicated mode too, testing route optimization outside the main campaign's slower pace. Fire Emblem Three Houses puts you in the role of a professor at Garreg Mach Officers Academy, choosing one of three houses tied to different nations before a continent-spanning war breaks the setting apart. That choice reshapes the entire back half of the game, changing allies, enemies, and how the story frames the same conflict from three different angles. Combat runs on the series' usual tactical grid system, weapon triangle, permadeath as an optional toggle, terrain and positioning mattering as much as raw stats. What sets this entry apart is the social sim layer bolted onto it. Tea time, teaching lessons, exploring the monastery, and building support between students, all of which feeds back into stats and combat pairings. It's a slower build than earlier Fire Emblem games, spending real time on relationships before the war narrative takes over completely.
No hesitation. That is that.
Metroid Dread follows Samus to ZDR, investigating an X-parasite outbreak, and spends most of its runtime being hunted by EMMI robots, patrolling restricted zones that can kill her outright if they catch her. Those EMMI encounters shift the pace from exploration to stealth, forcing you to route around detection instead of just fighting through, with a narrow melee counter as the only real way to escape once caught. Outside those zones, it's classic Metroidvania structure, an interconnected map, upgrades gating new paths, backtracking rewarded rather than punished. The melee counter system carries into regular combat too, turning well-timed parries into a core part of engaging enemies rather than a gimmick. After a long gap since the last mainline 2D Metroid, Dread's traversal feels tighter and faster than the earlier entries, built around momentum more than careful backtracking. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby's first fully 3D platforming outing sends him into a world abandoned by whatever civilization built it, with the Waddle Dees kidnapped by a group called the Beast Pack. The signature gimmick here is Mouthful Mode, where Kirby swallows objects far larger than his usual copy abilities allow, a car, a vending machine, a cone, and uses them to solve specific traversal puzzles rather than fight. Regular copy abilities still return, and can be upgraded through a crafting system, adding variation to enemies that used to be one-note fights. The level structure sits between fully open and fully linear, built around semi-open hub areas with side objectives and hidden Waddle Dees to track down. It's a noticeably different pace from Kirby's usual side-scrolling formula, but the traversal gimmicks keep it from feeling like a generic 3D platformer wearing a Kirby skin. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's pitch was simple on paper. Every fighter from every previous Smash game returns, plus new additions in one roster. And it actually delivered on that promise, which is why the roster size still gets brought up years later. The core platform fighting mechanics haven't drastically changed from Smash 4, but the sheer volume of stages, items, and now Spirits, a lightweight RPG system tied to World of Light, the single-player story mode, gives it more to do outside straight matches than earlier entries had. Competitively, it settled into its own metagame, distinct from Melee or Smash 4, and the online scene around it has stayed active for years past release. For casual play, having every character from the series' history in one place, along with music and stages spanning decades of Nintendo history, is still the main draw. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 ties together the two previous mainline entries' worlds, Keves and Agnes, lock in a war where soldiers are given artificially shortened lifespans and sent back into combat cycles. The party forms across both factions, eventually pushing back against the structure keeping the war going, rather than just picking a side in it. Combat runs in real time with an MMO-inspired class system, and the series' Ouroboros fusion mechanic lets paired characters combine into a stronger form mid-fight, adding a layer most JRPGs don't bother with. The open landscape is built at a genuinely large scale, with elevation and terrain changing how you approach fights and exploration rather than just being scenery. It's a long game, and the class-swapping system alone takes time to fully click, but the way it closes out the trilogy's themes gives the campaign weight the earlier two didn't quite reach. Tears of the Kingdom picks up after Breath of the Wild, with Ganondorf's return scattering Zelda through time and adding Sky Islands above Hyrule and the depths below it to a map that was already large. The new toolset is what actually changes how you play. Ultra Hand lets you build vehicles and contraptions out of scattered parts. Fuse combines weapons and objects into stronger versions instead of letting durability just end a fight. Ascend lets Link phase up through ceilings, and Recall reverses an object's recent movement. Together, they turn puzzle-solving and combat into open-ended problems with multiple solutions rather than a single intended answer. The vertical layering, sky, surface, underground, triples the explorable space without just copy-pasting the original map, and the building mechanics alone generated a genre of their own in how players approached shrines and combat encounters. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. There's no real story here. Mario Kart doesn't need one, but the mechanics and content volume are why this entry has stuck around as long as it has. Anti-gravity sections let karts drive on walls and ceilings during specific stretches of track, adding vertical variety the series hadn't used before. The Deluxe re-release on Switch eventually added the Booster Course Pass, doubling the track count with returning courses from across the series' history, which turned an already large roster into the biggest the series has had. Battle modes, a full character and vehicle customization system, and a smooth 60 frames per second frame rate in both docked and handheld modes keep the actual racing tight regardless of how much content sits around it. It's also the best-selling entry in the franchise by a wide margin, which says more about its staying power than any single feature does. Breath of the Wild. Link wakes up after a 100-year sleep with no memory, Hyrule already lost to Calamity Ganon, and the story unfolds through memories recovered while exploring, rather than a linear cutscene sequence. The open world runs on physics and chemistry systems working together. Wind, fire, metal, and elevation all interact in ways that let you solve the same problem multiple different ways, whether that's a puzzle or a fight. Weapon durability forces constant equipment turnover instead of settling into one loadout, and climbing plus gliding removes almost all traversal restrictions, letting you head toward any visible point on the map immediately. 4 Divine Beast dungeons replace the series' usual dungeon structure with more open, puzzle box designs, while over 100 shrines scatter smaller challenges across the map. It reset what an open-world Zelda could look like, and most open-world games since have borrowed something from it. Super Mario Odyssey's setup is simple. Bowser kidnaps Peach for a forced wedding, and Mario chases him across a string of distinct kingdoms with his new companion, Cappy. But the point of the game was never really the story. The capture mechanic, throwing Cappy onto enemies and objects to possess them, changes how nearly every kingdom is built, since a T-Rex, a Goomba, and a tank all move and interact with the environment completely differently once you're controlling them. Each kingdom is a dense sandbox packed with moons, rather than a single linear path, encouraging you to just wander and see what triggers a reward instead of following a set route. Mario's own moveset, cap jumps, rolls, dives, chained together, gives high-level movement a depth that rewards players who bother to learn it. Between the capture variety and the sheer density of things to find, it's the one entry on this list that rewards repeat playthroughs the most. That's the list. Different genres, different studios, but each one earns its spot through design choices, not marketing. Let me know which ones you'd swap out or move up. If rankings like this are useful, there's more where this came from.